So, Dave, this has become causing quite a stir in the NFL, and I gotta say, like there has been, it seems to me, over the past couple of years, and maybe it's just because I read you on a regular basis, and so I'm more aware of it. But there seems to be a willingness to make for individual athletes to see more of themselves in a political light. Am I imagining that? I mean, I certainly during the 60s there was some of that.
You're not imagining it a bit. I've been doing this writing about political athletes for 13 years. It's basically been like one of my beats is just straight up athletes who make political statements. And absolutely in the last 2 years, there's an unprecedented number of athletes who are speaking out. And, the reasons should be pretty clear. They're not dissimilar to the reasons in the 1960s. I mean, one reason is that there's actually a movement out there that athletes are connecting to, and that's the Black Lives Matter movement against police violence. And then I think it's also made a big difference that you have social media, because one of the big blocks against athletes protesting in the 90s and early aughts, I'll never forget one athlete said to me, like, what's the point of speaking out if some reporter is just going to get rich off of it and misquote what I say? Like, in other words, what's the damn point? It's not going to, I'm going to be misinterpreted, and it's not going to reach the people I want to reach. Well, social media has taken that completely out of the equation because, you sculpt your words and you put it out there. The other part of social media is that pro athletes are not really, the best people in the world at impulse control. So oftentimes you get athletes saying stuff publicly that I think in previous times maybe they go to their manager or agent or spouse and say, I'm going to say this, and they're talked out of it. When today it's just, no, I need to say this, bam, and they put it out there. All of these things, I think, have combined to create an atmosphere in sports, which I think is altogether different than 5-10 years ago. Because now, when something happens, like take something like Colin Kaepernick, for example. When this happens, it's not just Colin Kaepernick doing something. It's that if you're another athlete, you're expected to have an opinion on it.
Right.
It's not good enough to not have an opinion. I'll never forget about, what was it? It was 6 years ago when there was a big push to move the Major League Baseball All-Star Game from Arizona because of SB 1070, the Papers, Please anti-immigration bill that Jan Brewer was behind. And I'll never forget that reporters, the push largely came from outside groups, but some players were speaking out also. And a reporter asked Alex Rodriguez, what do you think about moving the All-Star Game? Alex Rodriguez at the time, the biggest star in baseball, person of Latino ancestry. And Rodriguez's response was to say, no, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole, and just walked away from the reporters. I don't even think you could get away with that now. Or if you did try to do that, I think it would be called out. Like, you'd be marked for it. It wouldn't be the sort of thing where it's just like, oh, well, they have a right to not have an opinion. It's like that there is an expectation that you're going to have something to say. And when you say it, there's an expectation that it at least be on point and thought through. And that's been another interesting thing about the Kaepernick situation is that several people in the sports world have come forward and said stuff that they've immediately regretted because they don't realize that, like, people are taking this very, very seriously and people are watching.
All right. Well, let's back up a little bit. And who is Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah.
And what was the genesis of his protest?
Yeah, you're right. One step at a time here. Colin Kaepernick is quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers who looked about 4 years ago to be on the cusp of being the biggest star in the sport. An unbelievable athletic combination of speed and arm strength. Quarterback for the 21st century. He came within one play of winning the Super Bowl about 3.5 years ago. Now, since that time, his career has taken a big downward dive from those lofty heights, which, interestingly, some people have used to try to delegitimize the fact that he's protesting. But for me, it's like that only makes it more admirable because he has far less cover than, say, if his name was Cam Newton. It's like, so his place in the league is legitimately at risk. It shouldn't be, because so few people can play quarterback, and he's still better than 50% of quarterbacks out there. But it's not where it was. And so all of that plays into this story, because the sports media has been trying to push this idea of saying that, like, well, he's only saying this because he's on his way out and he's got his eye on life after football. That, to me, is pure crap. I mean, he's still a young guy. He's still got a lot of years left, and he still has a ton of physical talent. He's just been on an awful, awful team. They've lost their coach. Half their defense has left because of concerns about injuries or actual injuries. It's really a stunning devolution that the 49ers have gone through. And so Colin Kaepernick, politically, is someone who he's biracial. He was adopted. He was raised by a white family. And I'm only pointing that part out because that's another thing that sports writers, to be clear, white sports writers are using to try to delegitimize what he's saying. So they're saying, oh, he's from the suburbs and he had white parents, therefore, what does he know about oppression? Which is completely beyond, I mean, you could be like a freshman seminar student in ethnic studies and get why that's profoundly stupid. Yet this is sports media, and there really is no basement for how stupid it can get. But that's where he comes from. He has certainly, by all accounts, a past of being very politically thoughtful and private and talking to other people. He has not been one of those athletes who's been very outspoken in the last couple of years in the manner that we've discussed around issues around police violence. But if you look at his social media feed, he's clearly reading a lot of people and retweeting a lot of people, which is interesting because, yeah, he hasn't been out there front and center by sending out a tweet that has a hashtag and says, why is this happening? It's like other athletes have done. But he's sending out articles, which says something. Like, it says that he's, like, immersed in this, and he's been trying to figure it out. And so he's come forward, and this is what my last column is about. He's coming forward not because he wants to make some sort of abstract protest against the United States or the flag or the anthem, but he has something very specific that he's trying to argue about police accountability, police violence, and as he sees it, and this is his analysis of it that he's expressed, that police violence is a form of government-sanctioned violence, and it's something that both political parties have come to accept and normalized in the United States. And so he is going to shine a spotlight on this and say no.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to some of the sort of the claims about why he's doing this, the idea that somehow this sets you up for after a life in football, I'm not exactly sure what it is that supposedly sets you up with, right? I mean, I don't even know what that. I guess theoretically, like maybe. You get a guest column in the Nation magazine, but I don't, this is not the way, if you want to become let's say a spokesman for a product or something like that, which you see athletes doing. I mean, it's fascinating. And this guy definitely, I mean, in the little that I know about his life before football, certainly as a high school student, this guy was getting, was a 4.0 student or something. So this is somebody who's a very thoughtful person. All right. Well, look, I want to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk more about this theme of sports figures becoming more politicized, because it's not just in the context of Black Lives Matter. We've seen it in the context of LGBTQ issues over the past couple of years, and we've seen it in terms of, the NBA saying we're not going to do we're going to boycott North Carolina. I mean, we're seeing more of this, it seems to me, and. When we come back, I want to talk more about this and the implications of what Colin Kaepernick has done, because my understanding is there's another player now who is going to join him in his protest. We'll talk more about that when we come back from our break. Sam Seder, Ring of Fire. We're talking to the great Dave Zirin.